It's kind of like a bucket.
Yeah, it's like a very squishy chair here.
So all these great professionals came out to have you interview me on my thoughts on tariffs.
Perfect.
You know, I thought about
what's going on in Washington,
I'll
D.C.,
answer
John?
any question that you have for me. No, you've got a lot going on. Senator Moreno. Can I still call you Bernie?
Of course.
We've known each other a while.
Unless you're testifying before Congress. You got to respect the building.
That's right. No, Senator, we appreciate you being here, and there's no bigger voice right now in the automotive industry. You celebrated 100 days yesterday. Tell me about it. What's it been like? What are you excited about? What are you concerned about 100 days in? Talk to us.
I hope the media is entertained. We've certainly given you guys lots of news. Look, at the end of the day, we had the right size of relationship. It reminds me, I guess the easiest way I'd explain it is when I was a kid and moved to the U.S. from South America. We moved to Fort Lauderdale, and my mom and dad, 7 kids, moving, very disruptive. They said, we're going to do a road trip across America. That was our plan, December 15th, 1971. We're going to take the 7 kids, mom and dad. We're going to get in this giant Buick station wagon, 4 seatbelts, 9 people, and we're going to drive cross country. My dad turned around in Orlando. And I think what we have been on as a country is a long road trip where we had unequal trade. We had a lot of issues around government growing too much, a government that we couldn't afford, debt that's skyrocketing, industries that were being kneecapped, handing over a lot of strategic advantages to other countries. And at some point, you had to turn the car around. And if we didn't turn the car around, it was going to be a problem. And that's what we're doing, and that's what you're feeling a lot of. But it's all going to be very positive. At the end of this, all this is going to be to create the greatest economy America's ever seen. And I'm firmly convinced that's right around the corner.
So, Bernie, when you turn the car around, oftentimes you'll say, well, here's where we're going, right? And I think talking to many folks all day today in this crowd, the uncertainty is driving a lot of fear. There's half of this room is manufacturer executives, half dealer principals, the other half vendors that obviously, you know, have a lot committed into this industry particularly. The word tariff, I know you keep hearing about. We'll check our phones right now. Maybe there's going to be a change by the time we get off stage. But help us sort of walk through the tariffs, why they're necessary, but more importantly, how does it lead us to the title of this being the golden age of automotive retail?
Yeah, well, let's set tariffs aside first, just a split second, and look at the entirety of the landscape. Number one, over the last 4 years, car companies were told, ignore what customers want, ignore what your dealers are telling you, and just manically make electric vehicles. It doesn't matter how much you lose on them. This, at the end of the day, is going to be all good. And a lot of car companies went down that cliff, losing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per car to make the car not customers wanted, not that dealers are ordering, but that politicians were asking you to make. And as a result, cars became a lot more expensive. So we're reversing course on that. I have a bill called the Transportation Freedom Act. It wipes out all the current greenhouse gas emissions, tailpipe emission standards, CAFE requirements, and replaces them with a new set of consistent standards that don't have any state's ability to have a waiver, and those standards are set for 10 years. So that car companies can make the cars they believe their customers will want to buy, regardless of what a government may say about one technology versus another. That's a big deal. The second one is massive regulatory reform. You want to build a new factory, it could take 18 months before you even finish your study of bats or frog legs. We're going to have massive regulatory reform, not only in permitting, but also in the energy industry and in the banking industry, industries that were under massive attack over the last 4 years. Then taxes. We have an uncertainty right now about what's going to happen with the 2017 tax reform. We're going to make that 2017 tax reform permanent. I believe we can reset the R&D and investment tax credits back to 100% and prevent a $4.5 trillion tax increase, which I think would be catastrophic for our economy. We're then going to fulfill the president's promises of no tax on tips, Social Security, and overtime. And so now the tax code is all set. So you got certainty on regulations, massive regulatory reform, certainty on taxes, and then workforce. Yeah. You have about 8.1 million able-bodied Americans that are able to go to work, but the government's paying them to stay home. We need to put a state-directed work requirement on able-bodied Americans to get those people back into the workforce or upskilled for the workforce. That will make a big difference. We also have a secure border, which means we can talk about immigration in a way that's different than when we had 10 million people coming in to the country over 4 years. So now that leads us to tariff, because you can't talk about tariffs unless you understand it's in the context of this big picture. The tariff conversation is very simple. Like at most other countries, if you sell a car in America, you should make it in America. That's true in South Korea, it's true in the EU, it's true in Japan. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation in the United States. So we want to make certain that we have as much final assembly here. Obviously, there's a fentanyl emergency tariff that I hope is temporary. I hope Mexico and especially Canada step up and do what they can to make certain that they stop the flow of fentanyl into our country, which is killing 110,000 Americans every year. That's completely unacceptable. I think that we can claim victory on that soon. Border crossings are down from 6,300 a day to 230 a day. Wow. 95% reduction at the southern border, 75% reduction in the northern border. So Canada's got to do a little bit more. But once that goes away, USMCA is reset, and we can have a strong trading relationship with our two strongest partners. And then isolate China, which of course is a whole different conversation. But that's how I view the whole deal. I think we get this all resolved in the next 60, 90, 120 days. And I do believe not only is there a golden age for America, there's specifically a golden age for automotive retail, because these jobs that we're creating, jobs in semiconductors, in automotive, in steel, in pharmaceuticals, and energy, those are the kinds of good jobs that can sustain a family with one job between a mom and a dad that can afford a car, by the way. You remember Henry Ford, right? Paid his workers more money so they could afford the very cars they make. I think that's what we're doing. So you're going to create a much larger marketplace. The 8 million people that are dependent on the government will now have good jobs as well. And I think you're going to see a golden age of automobiles, especially because car companies are going to have to lose billions of dollars selling cars customers don't want. So that's how I see it. It's right around the corner. And look, this country's been through a lot more difficult times, and right now exponentially more difficult. But car dealers have been through much more difficult times. I could name 20 things that car dealers have gone through, and thank God for the dealership retail model, because you have the most vibrant, the most flexible, and the most entrepreneurial business people in America in car dealerships, and they'll figure it out. We'll get through all this.
Love that. Love that positivity. We needed that in this room. But let's talk about the imbalance that of all the brands, and you know, we're always sort of battling for market share. In this tariff environment, you're going to have some immediate winners and some immediate, let's call it losers, or at least not have the same ability to sell the way that the other folks that already have an infrastructure built. And this takes time. So for the folks out here that have a Subaru store, a Mazda store, the list might go on, and they're highly concerned about the future, not the next 90 to 120 days, the future of their product. What do you say to them? How do you shed some light into what they need to be thinking about?
Well, both of those brands make cars in America. So first, thank you for investing in the United States for both of those specific brands. But they can do more here. And I understand they can't do it maybe in the next 30 to 60 to 90 days, but put a plan together. Put a plan together, present it to the administration, which is very simple. Here's how much more investment we'll do. Here's how much job growth we'll do. Give us a runway to make that happen. And I think there's an administration that's very open to making these kinds of deals so that you end up with much more investment. You saw the news. Honda hasn't confirmed it, but I'm going to assume it's true. I'm going to manifest that it's true, but the media is certainly reporting it, that they want to make 90% of Hondas in the United States. Toyota, it makes an enormous amount of vehicles in America. They're investing $14 billion in North Carolina. Hyundai Kia is investing $21 billion, so all that is net positive. John, the number right now stands at over $6 trillion. Wow. $6 trillion in new investment. NVIDIA just announced today they're going to make 100% of their advanced semiconductor chips in America. That's really good news. Look, we have to be independent on semiconductors, steel, pharmaceuticals, energy, and autos. That's a national security imperative. We can get there. And I think if we shrink the size of government, get our deficits under control, I think there's a chance we can balance our budget next year, which would be unbelievably positive for the markets. And when you look at that whole picture, that's where you ask the question, where are we going? Where are we going? That's where we're going. That's what it looks like. Yeah. A balanced budget, peace and stability around the world, a great tax environment, or a great regulatory environment, more millions of good, high-paying jobs for American citizens, and independence on critical industries that you cannot farm out. And a China that isn't ripping us off. Yeah. I mean, China alone is responsible for probably 5 million American deaths through the base chemicals they send to make fentanyl. Yeah. They're responsible for thousands, tens of thousands of factories that have been closed. And they're also responsible for millions of jobs lost. And look, you can't have an American worker compete with a worker that's paid $2 a day, nor do we want that to happen. And you can't allow that because what they've created is a massive export economy. They're not a consumer economy. So when you produce cars like BYD that are massively subsidized by the government with the intent of dominating and destroying the auto industry for the Western countries, that isn't something that's good public policy to allow.
It's concerning. So to that end, on China, they've been very much a leader in the EV space. Talk to us about the EV mandates, particularly in this state. They're very, very concerned about achieving 35% in the next 6-7 months.
Yeah, I mean, New York is probably ground zero of lunacy. Last year, with $7,500 incentives, 7% of the new vehicles sold in New York State were electric, 7%, with a $7,500 incentive. The incentive will be gone probably by the end of the year, if not sooner. And next year, it says that 35% of the cars have to be electric, full electric, or you pay $20,000-ish per car in penalties. So if you're a car company, what's worse, by the way, tariffs or that? To me, that's much worse. Yeah. And we have a Congressional Review Act that's hopefully we'll vote on next month to blow that up, make certain that is eliminated. Look, the federal government should be setting standards, not individual states, especially with lunacy like that. I'm not anti-electric car, I'm pro-consumer. Yeah. I'm pro-choice. I want consumers to pick the car that they want. That signal of consumer to dealer, dealer to manufacturer has worked really, really well.
It always has.
And it's also irrational. Why are we saying one size fits all? So you live in Georgia and Atlanta, and you mostly work at home and you commute to the office 5 miles away, electric car could work for you, but that's your choice. In my case, I drive 2,000 miles a week to every corner of Ohio. An electric car makes no sense. Like, let me drive the car I want, let you drive the car you want, it's your money. And then let's just add a little nugget of nonsense, which is in the Inflation Reduction Act, which had these $7,500 incentives, if you lease the car, none of the criteria mattered. So you could quite literally lease a Rolls-Royce Spectre, and no offense to Rolls-Royce Spectres, really cool car. Yeah. But for $550,000, I think that customer does not need $7,500 from the United States government, especially in the context of us having a $37 trillion deficit. So these are the kinds of idiotic policies that we have to stop and use something called good old-fashioned common sense.
But for the dealers out there that have been using that credit to sell the EVs that they've been told they had to order, they didn't necessarily order them because they wanted to, or the consumer drove it.
The question in and of itself makes no sense.
Exactly. But I've got to ask it, because that's the fear.
But a dealer should order the cars that they know they can sell in their market. The idea that a car company says, I know this car nobody wants in your marketplace, but I need you to take it anyway. I'm doing my part, meaning the car company. I'm going to lose 35 grand. You lose 10. This thing is a great model. Well, then we have to look at each other at some point and say, why are we doing this? Yeah. Like, this is really stupid. The funniest story was, for me, I walked into a Ford dealer during a campaign. It's a friend of mine, obviously there for a very transparent reason during a campaign. The same reason any politician calls anybody during a political campaign. And so I'm walking around the showroom, and I can tell, car dealers always have this like sixth sense of, is this a buyer? So I'm looking at this Lightning, and the first thing out of his mouth is, hey, if you want this thing, 10 grand below invoice. And I'm like, well, I drive 2,000 miles a week. The range on this car would have me charging this car every 2 hours. Right. And he goes, oh man, I'm telling you, it's a great car though. I'm like, yeah, but it's just not for me. And I go, but if you want to sell me a car, the car I really want, The car I really would drive out of here with today is a Ford Raptor R. I love that truck. That thing is a beast. He looks at me and goes, oh, I can't get you that car. He goes, if I had it for it, it'd be like 25, 50 grand over a sticker. Think about how insane that is.
Yeah, that's...
So wouldn't you make more Raptor Rs and less Lightnings in a normal environment?
Right.
Right? It'd be like if all of a sudden you had some insane politician woke up and goes, purple cars. Every car must be purple. And we say, well, people don't want purple cars. It doesn't matter. Purple is better for the environment. It's
we
safer.
have to have 35% by this date.
35% purple cars. Pedestrians will see them coming.
Yeah.
Will reduce accidents. White cars, nobody sees coming. No more white cars.
Right.
You pay a penalty for every white car you sell. It's dumb.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are nonsense, John. Look, so I didn't mean to interrupt your question. So what will you do as your dealer? Look, we're sitting here in April. Incentives aren't going to go away in 30 days, maybe not in 60, maybe 90. And if you're John Bozzella, you're out there going to church every Sunday saying, later, later, later. And I don't blame John for saying that. But they're going to go away at some point, so plan accordingly. Plan accordingly if you're a manufacturer. If you're in a market where EVs do well, then you're probably in better shape than if you're a Ford dealer in South Dakota, where you're probably not going to sell a lot of Lightnings. Yeah. So just plan accordingly. Plan accordingly for the $4,000 used car incentive as well.
So you're putting your dealer hat back on right now, right? So talk to me about your thought on how we should be thinking about used cars or dealer trades or fixed ops during this environment. You think there's an opportunity there to sort of
This is
really
to me a 1990s moment. I remember in the 90s with the gentleman who I worked for in Boston, Herb Chambers, great car dealer, great entrepreneur, learned everything in the car business from him. I remember sitting in a meeting with my colleagues, my other general managers, and they said, we're not going to put cars online. I mean, that's nuts. Like if you put a car online, nobody ever come to the dealership.
And then if you don't do that, don't put the price.
And if you put the price, which is just closed now because the business is done.
And then trade-ins,
in fact, there's a gentleman that sold, there's a great company up there called Jordan's Furniture. Yeah. They were a huge furniture store, and the guy would buy a lot of cars at the dealership I ran. And he looked at me and goes, you know, I sold Jordan's Furniture because I thought the internet would replace furniture stores. And my advice to Herb is sell his car dealerships before the internet replaces car dealers. Car dealers have died 100 times. You know, cats 9 lives, car dealers 100 and counting. And the internet didn't kill car dealers. The internet's actually made the car business stronger and better. In fact, you look at blue sky values in 1990. In 1990, you could buy the best Mercedes dealership in South Florida for $6-7 million, and people would have thought you were nuts. The Mercedes dealership in Coral Gables and Cutler Bay just sold for $750 million. A sign of how much healthier the business has gotten because of the internet. Way to answer your question, John. We have an AI revolution coming, where the dealers that embrace AI in terms of purchasing used cars, understanding what car moves, where reconditioning costs are going to be, how to get the car through the system as quickly as possible. The dealers that adapt to that are the dealers that are going to be absolutely obscenely successful.
Well, on the customer service side too, right? You think about how long it takes for someone to answer a call or a text or a chat or a trade-in inquiry, and AI can do all of that. It's pattern recognition over and over and over, and then hand it to somebody because we're still in the people business, right?
And you know what Herb Chambers taught me, and I live with this my whole life? Focus on the things you can control. Like if you go back, if you're in a retail automotive business, you're a car dealer, and you go back and you're talking to your team about tariffs, the only way you should be talking to your team about tariffs is, isn't this a great opportunity to sell the non-tariff cars that we have on our lot right now, and to take care of our clients, focus on service, focus on parts, focus on increasing your F&I throughput, focus on cutting your expenses. Those are the things you can control.
No doubt.
You can't control geopolitical politics. You don't know where and how quickly all this is going to be resolved. Now, if you're an automotive manufacturer, you can also control the variables that you can do. Lobby for my bill so that you explain to the Democrats what it means to you to have to make electric vehicles for New York. Make certain that you're talking to the administration about what you're willing to do to invest in America, make more things here. Highlight the investments you've already made, but open the dialogue and be positive. I can tell you the one thing that won't work is if you're out there publicly knocking the policies of this government, especially in the context of the fentanyl emergency. Because all of us as American citizens should be appalled by the fact that 110,000 of our citizens die every year of fentanyl poisoning. And we have two our biggest trading partners that are allowing that to happen. Now you say, well, that's not true. They haven't allowed it. They have. Look, Mexico surged 17,000 troops to the border, turned over 20 drug cartel kingpins, and are taking decisive action. What's happened? Border crossings down 95%. Canada is spending $1.3 billion in extra border security, and border crossings are down 75%. So they could do those things. They should have done those things, but we're a very forgiving country. And we have a very forgiving administration. And what we'll do is say, look, we'll let bygones be bygones, but look, we got to land this plane, and we need a cooperative environment with Mexico and Canada. They look out for us. We also pay almost the entirety of their defense. That doesn't seem like a very fair situation either. No. And they got to step up in that way as well.
It doesn't. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting.
On the other side,
I think that's a big piece of this.
For sure. And on the other side of this conversation, if you think we're on a sustainable path, if you think having an $18 trillion net investment deficit with the rest of the world, meaning the rest of the world owns $18 trillion more of America than we own of foreign countries, if you think paying $1 trillion a year in interest and having a $37 trillion debt makes sense, if you think having a $1.1 trillion deficit with China makes sense, if you think continuing to have factories close in America and decimating our working class, if you think that's all net positive and you want a tax environment that raises taxes by $4.5 trillion and a banking environment where Elizabeth Warren is approving individual loans, then we probably don't think we should do much. I think all of that needs to be changed. I think we need to turn the car around.
That's right, that's right. And if you think about it, we're watching an active negotiation take place right in front of us. To use car terms, this administration is foursquaring the world, right? On the automotive industry, they are, right? And we're watching that. But again,
now you're going to make all these reporters go on Grok and go, "What is Foursquare?"
Right. Yeah, well, if they're talking about us, we're winning. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
But in all seriousness, quite the 100 days you've had.
It's been a great time. Look, I know here's what I know about car dealers, and again, I learned this from Herb Chambers. If you're not obscenely optimistic, you'll never be a successful business person. Every single one of you who's in the retail automotive business is an optimist. You have to be. When you start with Jim Moran, some guy from Japan comes over and shows you this tiny little car when everybody wanted giant cars and said, "Would you mind selling these?" And he goes, "I'll sell them for you. What do you want, like Broward County, Florida?" Yeah. No, I'll take the whole Southeast. And his buddies are going, "That's stupid. Nobody will ever buy these things." Yeah. I think it worked out well for Jim Moran. Yeah. Today, when you have a brand like Genesis, which was new, it's like, can Hyundai really get into the luxury business? That was an unproven question 3 or 4 years ago. Right. And they come to you and go, "We want you to build a $7, $8, $10 million facility, put 15 service bays in." There's 2 units in operation, right. So that makes a lot of sense. And you go, "Of course I will." And you build this beautiful facility, and the brand does really well. Yeah. I remember being one of the first Kia dealers in the country. Yeah. Kia of Linfield, Massachusetts. Yeah. We used to schedule the first transmission replacement at delivery. And today, they're one of the highest quality vehicles. They have incredible design. You look at cars like the Telluride. My son-in-law has that car. He loves it.
Great car.
And it's a great car. They make great, amazing automobiles. But those dealers that signed up for that brand said, "I see a future here. I see positive outcomes. I see a bright future for me and my family as a result of taking this risk." Right. Don't ever lose that. Don't ever buy into the naysayers, the negativity, the pearl clutching. You had economists up here telling you the SAR is going to be under 14 million. Look, marijuana is legal in New York, so I forgive them. The SAR is going to be over 16 million this year. I would go long in the car business, and I think the greatest years are ahead of us. I actually think the SAR can hit over 20 million in the next few years because the fleet age has gotten incredibly old. Cars are 14, 15, 16 years old. And by the best thing you can do is encourage your customers. If you care about the environment, you care about safety, get a new car. I don't care what brand you're talking about. A new version of a Toyota is dramatically safer, better, and more reliable, and better for the planet than a 15-year-old of the same brand. So get more people in new cars. We went through a dip during COVID for the semiconductor chips. All dealers have forgotten that, by the way. What? Did we have a chip shortage? I forgot all about that. And the dealers who freaked out and panicked were the dealers that lost. The dealers that embraced it and said, hey, no, this is an opportunity to dig in and improve my operations, they won.
Well, as the marketing guy, we had a lot of guys going, what do I need to spend money on marketing for? I'm selling them off the truck. Those weren't great years for marketing, but it was for staying in touch with the customer and fixed ops and whatnot. I know you're passionate about the dealer network, and you're talking right now about how important that is historically, how important it is moving forward. I bet you're having some tough conversations right now with Volkswagen and Honda. Tell me, I know you're passionate about that.
Yeah,
So share
honestly,
some of that passion.
I just don't understand it, honestly. The model has worked really well. It's worked well for both sides. The car companies have won. Let's face it, you get some irrational entrepreneur that's willing to invest an obscene amount of money in a single-purpose building and willing to take on the hiring, the staffing, the management of day-to-day, the retailing piece of it. I used to joke with my friends at Mercedes. I was in a Mercedes dealer board for a long time, and I'd go to the factories in Germany, these beautiful facilities. I can't even imagine the skill set it takes to build something like that. And I would walk around the factory, I go, I think the paint booth should be over there. And I think that line should be moved there. They go, what do you know about making cars? And I go, what do you know about selling them?
Yeah, that's
How about you stay in your lane, I stay in my lane.
That's right.
And this will be a great relationship.
That's right.
And I think when you look at car companies, especially Volkswagen dealers, I was one. I invested in an irrational amount of money in a brand new Volkswagen dealership, and where you look at it and go, okay, let me get this straight. If the wood color is a certain color, more people will buy cars. Like if it was 2 shades lighter, people are I was gonna buy the Atlas, but with that light color wood, I'm out.
Yeah.
But we do it. Yeah. I think it's unfair to then go ahead and make a car to compete with your own dealers. That's not the kind of relationship dealers and manufacturers should have. I'm optimistic that they'll both change course. Yeah. The model worked really well, and there's brands out there, Toyota probably being the best, that understands how important that dealer-customer relationship is, and what's the most successful car company on earth? Toyota. Yeah. So be more like Toyota.
That's right.
They make quality cars consumers want, do it really well, honor your dealers, take care of your customers, and make sure they're profitable. Right. Because no dealer is going to take better care of their customers than the profitable dealer. That's and right. Toyota does a good job of that. And I think we can get past this question mark of whether it's a good idea or not.
Speaking of profitable, during this tariff thing, just coming back this one last time, we're thinking about profits or we're thinking about volume. We're going to have a decision to make, let's just say, right? If it doesn't work out perfectly in the next 120 days, which one do you err towards?
Look, every single brand has a different ingredients of what they should do. Look, Ford, Jim Farley, give him enormous credit. Look what he's done. He's embraced it. Employee pricing, Stellantis has copied. I'm hoping General Motors comes to the table and does the same thing. So you can actually make the case that car prices are down right now. Hyundai and Kia has frozen price increases. Mercedes has done the same thing. Those are the ones I know about. If there's others, I apologize, I don't mention. Look, it's always an opportunity. Look, if I was a Ford dealer, it's a huge opportunity to gain market share, and that's ultimately what you got to do. If you're with the other brands, look, encourage those brands to go to the administration and make the deals, John. Look, who knows how to make deals better than the people in this audience? Right. You guys are the most successful car dealers in America. Encourage your car manufacturers to go out and make a deal with the administration. You got the #1 deal maker. Maybe read Art of the Deal before you write the letter, but that's what I would do. And the good news is we're going to get past all this. We've been through much worse as an industry and dramatically worse as a country. Yes. This is a country that went through a revolution, a civil war, World War I, World War II, a civil rights movement that got us back on the right path in the 60s, economic collapses around the corner, a financial crisis that I analogize in 08-09 to running through a field where your friends are just getting shot dead. We made it through that. We made it through
semiconductors.
Yeah, we'll make it through this. This will be a blip. We won't even be talking about this next year at the auto show. We'll be talking about, wow, man, we can't keep up with the volume of sales. This is fantastic.
Well, Bernie, man, you've been a great friend. I enjoyed working with you for over a decade. We're in New York, so I'll quote a Bronx tale, but never wait. The worst thing in life is wasted talent. And when you sold your stores, I'm like, man, this guy's got so much left to give. And it's refreshing to have an American politician as transparent as you are, that cares as much as you do, and to finally have a voice, a dealer in the Senate is a really, really big deal. And in just your first 100 days, you're making waves. You've got everyone's back in this room. We appreciate that. On behalf of this room, we appreciate that. We know that you have our back, and we know that you're putting all those talents to good work. We're seeing it, and we support you fully. But thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.